You're listening to the CDD-Ghana Democracy Dialogues podcast, a platform for meaningful conversations on governance, democracy, and development. From policy discussions to citizen perspectives, we explore key topics like electoral reforms, economic policies, and human rights. Join the conversation on YouTube, Spotify, and our website. Stay informed, stay inspired.
In this episode, we're looking at corruption. Is Ghana ready to win the fight? That's the big question that we're asking. Obviously, it's a major obstacle to Ghana's democratic progress. And I'm talking about corruption here, often seen as a stable democracy in West Africa. Ghana faces growing pressure from widespread corruption that weakens public trust, strains institutions, and hinders national development. With these challenges in focus, we explore a central question. Does Ghana have the tools, political will, and public support to effectively tackle corruption? This episode features insightful perspectives from investigative journalists whose work has exposed some scandals and lifted the veil on how corruption operates across different sectors. The discussion will help us better understand the types of corruption, from petty bribery to elite capture and grand corruption, and offer first-hand accounts of the challenges and risks faced in uncovering the truth. So straight away, let me just welcome my panelist. Let me say hello to Ghanaian investigative journalist, widely recognized for his extensive work on anti-corruption. He's done a bit of work on electronic waste and the exploitation of natural resources in Ghana. Emmanuel Dobevi, great to have you. Francis Nigel is investigative journalist with Corruption Watch Ghana. She's investigative journalist of the year. She's won that award. The first female in about 26 years. So Francisca, thank you so much for also joining. Frederick Esiama is a lead investigator. Well, he's investigative journalist with Corruption Watch. Evans is also an investigative journalist. So I welcome you all to this very important conversation. It's a huge question that we're asking, but we're going to be breaking things down. So I want to ask, first of all, you have all done work on corruption. It's changed in a way, because it's very common now, and we're talking about more sophisticated ways that people engage in corruption. So let's talk about the changing phases of corruption, from small-scale bribes to large-scale misconduct in key sectors. And I think I want to start with you, Emmanuel Dobevi. What would you say has been changing in this particular area?
Well, thank you very much, Mama V. What we are seeing in recent times is the level, again, the brazen form of the acts of corruption. In the past, I mean, many years ago, when I started practicing journalism, when you hear about corruption, it's like a small act in a little corner somewhere, but it's increasingly become pervasive. And it's like corrupt people don't feel any concern anymore about being found out. And they do it with such brazen attitude. No fear for any repercussions, no fear for embarrassment. If you look at Ghanaian traditional society, people largely feel embarrassed, particularly there are family names that don't want certain bad deeds to be associated with them. And therefore, people who come from these family and bear these family names don't get involved in bad conduct, such as stealing, lying, corruption, and what have you. But with time, people just don't feel embarrassed anymore. People don't feel shame anymore. And largely, again, corruption seems to have become the easiest way to acquire wealth. Uh, People have worked so hard in this country. There are people we know who have consistently, genuinely, honestly earned their keep, but they are unable to save enough money for themselves and for their future and their children because of the rising cost of the standard of living. Again, because of, the chaotic nature of our society. It's not easy to buy land and build a house. It's equally not easy to buy and own a house. Even mortgaging is becoming extremely expensive. So you can't afford all these. And people are thinking about their future. People are thinking about what will happen to their children. So then what do? You are working hard, you are honest. In fact, when you are honest in Ghana, people insult you. They call you names. They are surprised that you are doing the kind of work you do, or you work in an organization like this and you are so poor. I've heard people tell me, how can you be a journalist like this and you're always complaining about money? I own and run a news website, and people ask me, how can you be owning and running a website like this and you don't have money? So people expect that every opportunity you have, use it to make money, whether rightly or wrongly. And so with time, people have just lost their sense of guilt for offending behavior, particularly when it comes to being corrupt. Of course, again, when you look at people who have power and authority, if you take most of the corruption studies done, you find that the police would take bribes at every little opportunity. And now they take it openly. They used to take it and hide, but now they take it in the open. And if you get a case and you go to any police station to report, the attitude of the police you will meet at the counter immediately will tell you that they expect you to pay them money before they do their job. If you've ever been robbed, or if you've ever had thieves break into your house, break into your car, as I suffered that about a year ago, and about 4 months, 3, 4 months ago, a friend of mine suffered that kind of thing twice. They snatched his phone whilst he was in a vehicle in town, and then he parked his car for just 2, 3 minutes, and they broke the car window and took away his bag. He went to the police and came back regretting that he had gone to the police. I felt the same way. They literally communicate to you. Sometimes they don't say it openly, but they expect you to pray, to bribe them, to pay them before they do their job. And then, of course, we see them on our roads where they stop cars and say you are arrested. They threaten to take you to the station. And they know people don't have time to go to the station. People are in a hurry to go do their stuff. So people pay them money. But the national, is it NCCE, did a study a few years ago, and what they found was quite shocking, that the organizations that you hardly expect to be taking bribes are taking bribes. At the ministries, government institutions, even people who man our cemeteries. You have lost someone and you are mourning, you are planning a burial, and you go to register for a grave. They want to extort money from you. When people are doing autopsy in our hospitals, you have lost a beloved person, and someone you love so much, and you are in pains. And while they are doing the autopsy, they would invite you into the autopsy lab, and extort money from you. This has happened to me once or twice. When I had lost loved ones and we going through the preparation for burial. So increasingly, there is no lines drawn as to where people would extort money from you, or where they would ensure that you pay bribes to get things done. You listen to people saying they want to apply for passports, and we know how much the official price for rates for applying for a passport is. But you find people advertising on social media saying, pay so much money and I can get your passport for you in 3 days. And you will find people who have gone through the normal process of applying for a passport tell you they haven't received their passport for a year, or for 2 years, or for 3 years. Of course, there are occasions where you would hear people say, oh, I applied for my passport and got it and got it through the normal process in a month or 2 months or even a week. The passport system was sanitized some time ago, where you could actually apply, sit home, get a text message that your passport is ready. You go and queue and pick it. All that has changed. Now you have to pay extra money to people. So increasingly, we are becoming a corrupt society because people want to make money. And mind you, Ghanaian society is endemically poor. We are all generally poor. Every single Ghanaian you meet is coming from a poor family. We don't have generally that society where there are people who are wealthy. Wealth is passed from generation to generation, but probably very, very few. But it's not very common. So everybody wants to make money because of the high cost of living. Everybody is running up and down to meet the cost of living. I just read something on social media, someone crying about um rent in Accra and Kumasi. Every year, landlords in Accra raise rents. They have no reason for raising, but they'll tell you they are raising their rents. So it's become expensive, and people can't survive on their, normal salaries and earnings. And so people are finding all kinds of ways, and therefore they are justifying their actions. People who normally wouldn't take bribes from you would take bribes from you. Journalists would take bribes. I mean, and some of the times when you hear how much they take, it's like, I mean, are people serious? I mean, something you wouldn't even take for anything, but they will take and do things that you don't expect even journalists to do. So people work to survive, and people are looking for easy ways. So increasingly, people's inhibitions are being lowered. People don't feel shy anymore. People don't feel worried anymore if they are corrupt. And often, our politics has also exacerbated the situation. Corruption is only corruption when you are in government. When the party moves into opposition, they are not corrupt anymore. It is the party in government. And then when government changes, then the ones who now used to criticize government for being corrupt then take over government and also get to be accused of corruption or even actually become corrupt. So increasingly, the barriers for corruption are being lowered. The inhibitions are being dropped, and people don't feel shy anymore. And that is where we are today, and it's, as a matter of fact, put our society in a very, very dangerous position. We are literally at the precipice, and it's not safe at all for us.
Right. So I think you paint the perfect picture, and you touch on very crucial things that we can all, as Ghanaians, if you live in Ghana, you can relate. So, Frederick, let me come to you. You've also done a lot of work in this area. About 6 years ago, you focused in the courts. You talked about corruption in a district court. 6 years ago and now, let's also just fast forward to 2022, where you did that story on the examinations, the West African Senior School Certificate Examination, and how students were assisted to cheat in the exam. I mean, if you look at your 2019 story or expose about corruption in the courts, and then 2022, would you say, because in 2019 there was a bit of, people were shocked, but in 2022, and this is 2025, would you say that we still get surprised about these exposes?
Thank you very much. I believe that people get surprised, and not surprised because we are discovering new cases of corruption, but surprised because of the modus operandi that the perpetrators are now using. And I would like to say that even as a country, we have acknowledged the fact that corruption is changing. The manifestation of corruption is changing. And for that matter, our Criminal Offences Act, for instance, and we've amended it to redefine corruption and now made it a felony, when in fact it was a misdemeanor. We saw corruption to be limited to bribery of a public officer. If you look at the two cases that you mentioned, the Ada court story, where a court registrar keeps money that has been awarded in judgment to a court user and keeps tossing the person and giving the excuse that the other party has not come to pay the money. You may call that maybe a deception, but take the cheating squad, for instance, the one on the examination. You see that as an organized crime because it is headmasters together with parents and with the students, and then with invigilators who you would call external stakeholders to the school, and in some cases even WAEC officials involved in the whole architecture to cheat. So we have moved from where we used to see it as a simple crime of somebody giving money to another person to get favor or to get something to be done in their favor, to a point where people are organizing schemes. We've seen some of the stories that have come from Corruption Watch, from Fourth Estate, from Joy News, from Emmanuel. You see that people are now operating more as networks. And this is corruption. We're not talking about other forms of crimes. We are talking about just corruption. It has taken on many faces and many forms. And that is what really shocks people when you break a case. The manner in which the whole thing is executed is what surprises people. And so I would say that yes, we still get surprised by the way some things are done. Let's even look at the current allegation against the former boss of the Signals Bureau. We had a similar case in the NCA case that was prosecuted, and 3 people were jailed. I think it must have been 2021 or so. That involved $8 million. Fast forward 8 years later, that occurred in 2016. Fast forward to 2025, we are discovering a similar thing. And I'm not here pronouncing anybody guilty. But if you look at the facts of the case, it resembles what happened in 2016, which resulted in the jailing of 3 people. That involved $8 million. This is how much? $7 million. If you look at some of the cases that Manasseh broke, for example, the one about the former PPA boss, if you look at the modus operandi, it is taking on more complex forms. And that is what is shocking about the way people are perpetrating corruption nowadays. As Emmanuel mentioned, there's a certain kind of impunity with which people are doing it, and they're as if to rub it in our faces and say, nobody can do anything to me, or I am so smart that I have outwitted the system. When we started with Corruption Watch, we did cases at NLA, for instance, which involved procurement infractions, which are simply about the head of the institution, abusing his threshold. But some of the cases we are discovering nowadays goes beyond somebody abusing their threshold in a procurement to well-organized, well-executed, multi-stakeholder scheme, to rip off the state. So that's how I'll put it. We get surprised, yes. And even we, the investigators, sometimes still get surprised by. And I'm sure Francisca will tell you how some of the stories she did shocked her. Even the things that she found, for example, in the DVLA case. We believe that things are done a certain way, but after she goes in, how she sees that the thing is actually done is what actually then shocks her and shocks the whole team about the way it is done.
You know, last year in 2024, WAEC at the start of the examination, the WASI exams, disclosed that it had uncovered attempt by some schools to engage in organized cheating in the examination. So Emmanuel talked about the fact that people are doing it openly. I mean, nobody is afraid of anything any longer. We have a lot of institutions that are supposed to fight corruption. We will come to that in a bit. But I want to talk to Francisca about some of the work that you've done and whether or not things are improving, or as Frederick said a while ago, the means are getting a lot more sophisticated and well organized.
Previously, when you do investigation, you find an individual. You realize a lot of the investigation we used to do in the past will be, we mention names of individuals because like an individual's involvement and you establishing the crime the person is committing within an institution. Unfortunately, we are moving away from that and heading deep into institutionalized corruption. And so you are investigating something and you actually think the person at the point of service delivery is the one who is behind the corrupt act. But while doing the investigation, deep into the investigation, you realize that the whole thing is institutionalized. And it becomes difficult to fight corruption when it is institutionalized, when it passes through the channels, when illegal fees, for instance, are being charged. And these illegal fees, they give receipts. Once they give receipts, the corruption has been institutionalized. They are giving receipt, official receipt from institutions for services they are not supposed to charge fees for. That is institutionalized corruption. And so the format is changing. At first, you have an individual who you can hold responsible for the act. Now, you no longer have an individual to hold responsible. It's the whole institution. And it becomes so difficult to find who to hold responsible for these actions. And when you expose it, you realize they are changing the way they do things. When I did DVLA, for instance, right there at the client service, where the first place you are directed to, even I am even going far, right at the security post, when you get to DVLA office and you greet the security officer, ask the security officer for direction to whichever department you should go to for the need you came there with. Instead of security officer directing you to block A for the service or block D for the service, he asks you, give me a breakdown. And then you give the security man a breakdown of what you came to do. And the next moment, he makes an offer. He says, okay, come with me. And so instead of you going through the processes as required by law, right at the entrance of the institution, the security takes you through to somebody. And now you are going to cut corners throughout the transaction you come there to do. And at the end of the day, you end up partaking in corruption even without your intention, without you deliberately intending to take part in the corrupt act. When I exposed that DVLA story, for instance, because at the beginning of the investigation and all that, yes, it's introduced right at the entrance, you get to client service, and the person tells you what the official procedure is. When he finishes, he tells you, take my number, call me later on and let's talk. You call him and he gives you a different offer. He lets you know, okay, the official process, this is the cost. It is lower. But you will do this, the exams, people have been writing, they fail. So when you write, I can't really assure you that you are going to pass. And you keep registering and you keep passing. What they actually even fail to tell applicant is the fact that the rewriting is you are not going to pay the whole fees. The whole DVLA driver's license application fee. You don't need to pay the whole fees. At the time I learned it was 50 cedis to rewrite. And they will not tell you the truth that it is 50 cedis, so that is okay. If it is 50 cedis, I want to write it and check what my strength is. Because the DVLA test, for instance, it is not just a test for the mere fact of writing a test. It's a test that is testing your ability to drive, your knowledge about driving, your knowledge about road sign, your knowledge about certain signals on the road to classify you as somebody who is qualified to be able to move a vehicle, to share the road with others. And so if the person even tells you the truth that, oh, when you fail the exams, you will have to rewrite the computerized test. And when you are rewriting, it's just 50 cedis. And I was okay, then I'll give it a try. If I fail after all, I'm spending just 50. But he will not tell you that. They make you believe that when you write and you fail, you are going to pay the sum of money you used to start the whole process. And so you are influenced to cut corners and take the other option where he tells you, I have a better option for you. You just give me this amount of money, which is definitely higher than what the official fee is. But you give me this amount of money and I'll take care of it. You don't need to write that exams and go and be failing and all that. And indeed, you pay the money and you go and sit in an office where there are CCTV cameras, but you do not take the test. An official will come and take the test in an office and in an examination hall with CCTV cameras. Who is doing the monitoring? This is how the institutionalized process is. So everybody plays a blind eye to whatever it is that is happening in the institution from the different stages of service delivery. And so when you expose this story and you expose probably maybe 5 individuals that your camera captured, you realize that those 5 individuals are interdicted. And you visit DVLA. I went there 6 months after the story. I went and I realized, okay, now at the security post, I wasn't introduced to anything. I was directed. I went straight to the client service. When I asked for the processes, the person gave me all the processes, but did not sell the other option to me like it was done automatically previously. But I realized that does not mean that they've stopped doing it. They are still doing it. But this time around, they don't give you the information right there like it used to be. Take my number and call me. They are not doing it that way, but they are still doing it. And so you investigate something, you spend money, you spend your time, you risk your life, and you investigate something. At the end of the day, you realize the people who were captured, because the corruption has become institutionalized. So when you capture maybe somebody, you go there on Tuesday, the set of people you captured, they are not the only corrupt people there. On Wednesday, the set of people that will be there are equally doing it. But because your cameras captured it on Tuesday, those people are appearing on your documentary. And once they appear, they get interdicted. But on Wednesday, that badge will come to work and they continue. And so until we are able to fight what is within this institution, because it's now lined, it's a whole chain, it goes through the whole process. And because when somebody gives you the corrupt deal, the directors are the ones who gives the final approval. What checks and balances are there? How are they able to verify that you actually went through the process? You did the test, you went for the driving test and all that. But it goes through and they give you the approval and give you the license. So it's a whole chain of activities going on. And it becomes difficult to fight. The only institution that I actually saw an actual improvement was STC driving school, because they were involved in this investigation. And 2 of their workers were interdicted and they were subsequently dismissed. 6 months later, after I went to DVLA, I visited STC as well. And the process looked clean. I went through the process and we went there twice, different set of people. I sent different set of people to the place and it was a clean service. As we speak, I cannot tell if they've gone back to the way they used to do things. But then the reviews they promised to do, it was present, it was visible when we visited. And so when we see, because for STC, for instance, even at the interview stage, the Nana Komia, who was at the time the head of the STC, he gave us the assurance right there that this isn't going to be tolerated. These people are going to lose their job. He said it right there, even before the documentary came out. And he kept his word and make sure that people were punished. And I think that would serve as a disincentive for others who work in the same institution. But in other institutions, you expose this thing and they do nothing. These are institutions that state agencies. Now, when it even becomes the bigger scale of corruption, where it becomes it exposes the public officials and things, you realize You do grand stories, you expose grand corruption and all that. At the end of the day, it just becomes famous, but they do nothing to them. And so, what do you want to use to tell somebody corruption is not good? When you expose somebody stealing billions of CDs and nothing happens to the person because he's powerful, how do you convince somebody else not to be corrupt? When you've clearly shown that it's a way of making money and you don't get punished.
Evans, let me come to you. Evans says Yamo Mensa is with Code for Africa. Evans, you've done quite a bit of work with Fact Check Ghana, with the Fourth Estate, and now you're with Code for Africa. You've done some stories in the past. Maybe your story might be different. Have you seen any sort of improvements?
Not much, and I share in the sentiments of all the other colleagues who have spoken earlier. And I think that it's demoralizing knowing too well that institutions of states, for instance, will not even take up the stories that you do to either further investigate and prosecute the individuals mentioned. So sometimes you, the journalist, is now even being forced, not having to go and petition the people involved, which ideally should not be your job. All right. But I think for us, so far, one of the things that we have witnessed is with the school placement story that we did, where we realized that after the publication, in the subsequent years, we noticed that they've increased the number of schools that ideally the students will select to go to. So I think at the time it was 5, and now it's been increased to about 8 or 10. So now gives room for a lot more people to apply to certain schools, and then they will get it. And it reduces the corrupt activity that happens within the NAT hall, where a lot of the things also take place, and the middlemen cash in on the placement of students.
So, Evans, just give us a brief about that particular story, what is sought to expose.
Okay, so the story exposed the activities of middlemen who worked with some officials at the school placement secretariat and the Ministry of Education to place students in their schools of choice if they're willing to pay some amount of money. And that amount ranging from 5,000 to 10,000 to 20,000, depending on the school you want to go to. And what we did was that we were able to get some of the low-hanging individuals because it was difficult to penetrate or to go beyond the individuals who played the middleman role at the NAT hall in Accra. So they collaborated with some of the officials at the school placement center, and they took money from us and changed placement for some students whose details we gave to them. And they did that, and some of them were arrested. Some too were not arrested because the police claimed that the officials of the Ministry of Education refused to respond to their call for investigation or to even let them investigate the matter. And so that was how it ended. But some of them went to the court, and the court said that because the police failed to now connect the individuals who are before them, which are like the middlemen that we got to get a placement done, because they failed to produce the top officials who were involved, there was no way the charge against them, which was the abetment of crime, could be sustained because the individuals at the top haven't been brought to face the court. And so they were let go. But the only improvement we've seen was that the number of schools that ideally the students have selected have increased. And so that gave room for a lot more students to get the schools that they want to go to. And this may reduce some sort of corrupt activity that we have witnessed in year 2021.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's look at the state of Ghana's anti-corruption institutions. And Emmanuel, I'll start with you on this. We have quite a number of institutions that can handle corruption. In fact, in 2018, we also established the Office of the Special Prosecutor, which is a specialized, independent anti-corruption body. So why are we still recording corruption in these numbers? Look at the corruption index. We're declining. Every year we keep going down. So why?
Sometimes I start to think maybe it's also about the commitment to get the work done. by some of these institutions themselves. For instance, let me cite this example. When I was doing a story on the free Wi-Fi procurement process, we realized that at the time I had gone in, Yoko had gone to get some preliminary information on the operations of the individual involved, the owner of the company that was executing the contract. And they realized that the contractor was evading taxes. Apart from that, they also knew that the guy's company, for instance, was involved in other fraudulent activities. But they got this report and then they hid it on their shelves and they kept it from the public. And Yoko refused to act on the report. Even when I called the then director of Yoko, Mametua, to complain about this. The only thing she mentioned was that it was still under investigation and that she wouldn't want to speak to the matter. Well, I reported the issue and I had to petition Parliament, the Committee of Education, and even the OSP. And nothing came out of it. I mean, it appears to me as though, we're just setting up institutions. When we think that there's a lacuna in our part of our law and we want people to have a semblance of trying to fight corruption, we put up an institution to fight the corruption and nothing comes out of it. Look at the OSP, for instance. It's only 8 years. And I don't think they have had any successful prosecution so far. Maybe when it comes to refunds, at least we could talk about the La Bianca issue. But apart from that, they've not had any successful prosecution so far. And that's disappointing. Apart from that, there are other several institutions that do not seem to be playing their roles. I don't know whether it's just the lack of commitment of the officials in charge and the government of the day. Because currently, the public announcement that government was not going to prosecute individual foreigners involved in illegal mining, it's quite for lack of the word, let me say it's a nonsense approach. I don't think it's the best way to deal with the matter. It appears as though Ghanaians that are involved will be prosecuted. But if you're a foreigner, particularly from China, you're involved, you will be prosecuted. And that brings me to the story we did some time back where we realized that in 2021, there was only 2 Chinese that were in our prisons, even though we have realized that a lot more Chinese have been arrested and were being prosecuted for illegal mining. Despite that, just 2 of them were in our prisons. And even the 2, the prison service failed to give us the exact crime they have committed. And so I don't think that every now and then we all get disappointed by the institutions, and it seems to me that we are failing. And there's no really a fight against corruption. There's just a semblance of something that we are trying to do just to portray the case, like we have in the Keno Furata case, where somebody has been involved in, for instance, the SMO deal, and he's not determining when you'll be available for state agencies to question him and all that. So I don't think that we are really ready to fight any corruption of a sort. We're just dilly-dallying at them, and that government will come to an end, and then we'll move on. Yeah.
You're listening to the CDD-Ghana Democracy Dialogues, and in this episode, we're looking at corruption. Is Ghana ready to win the fight?
Thank you for listening to the CDD-Ghana Democracy Dialogues podcast. Stay engaged, stay informed, and be part of the conversation on governance, democracy, and development. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and visit our website for more insightful discussions.